Hey guys, welcome back to Suburban Tongue. In this week's episode, I got the great honor of getting to talk with Phoenix Stratemeier. He works with Morgainz Elite Cycles and is positioning himself to move upwards into Morgainz Fitness and to help it to grow and expand from there. Getting to talk with people like Phoenix, who have such a clear and concise vision of themselves and their work, is so incredibly inspiring. And I hope that what I felt during this conversation will carry over our little fiber optic divide. I do apologize in advance for the audio quality of this episode. I tried as much as I could to fight that monster, but keeping my show as I do as sort of a travelogue on the road, I try as much as I can to meet my guests at their place of business, and so the audio quality varies based on the room we meet in. In this case, that means occasionally hearing people working out in the room behind us. Hopefully, though, this conversation will make up for that slight handicap. Enjoy.
We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Through the unknown remembered gate, when the last of earth left to discover is that which was
So,
the beginning.
Phoenix, what is your involvement with Morgainz specifically? I know that you do the spin class. Originally, I thought that you started the place, because that's how we met. You were doing promo for them at Roxbury. My original impression was that this was your one thing, but it seems like you've been kind of all over the place throughout your career. So can you just talk a little bit about Morgainz, and then we'll get more into that?
Yeah, I've been with Morgainz Fitness since 2020. I have an interesting journey of how I got into the fitness industry. I originally went to Pitt Johnstown for information systems, and I dual majored with business management. I kind of had a quarter-life crisis. I didn't want to get into IT.
Who does?
Yeah, right, exactly. So, I've always had a passion for fitness and helping others. So I decided to apply to a local gym, which was Morgainz Fitness in Richland. I was the manager there for probably about 2.5, maybe 3 years, something like that. And I moved away because I got into physical therapy school. I got into Pitt, which is the ranked #1 physical therapy school in the country. And I moved to Pittsburgh, and I decided not to go. And I came full circle, and I got back into IT, but from a different element.
Okay.
So instead of just doing networking and just the grunt work, I got into a leadership position where I help build high-performing teams. So I work with software developers, and I coach the organization as well. But as far as my involvement with Morgainz, I had a friend, someone I knew from Morgainz Fitness in Richland, and she was a spin coach. It's actually Carly. You met her today.
Okay, I was wondering. Yeah.
And she has been, at this point, she has been a spin coach for 5 years, and she's been a spin coach pretty much everywhere in Johnstown, whether it was East Hills or Windber. Or she even owned her own business at one point, which was Gear Force Elite Cycle.
Okay.
And we wanted to go into business together, but with me moving away, we kind of turned it into a 5 or 10 year plan. Well, since I decided not to go to school and I moved back, there was an opportunity. She was kind of going out of business just as I was coming back, and I said, you know what, let me take over ownership. I'll buy bikes, and we'll start a new spin studio. And I had connections here with Morgainz due to, my management experience here.
From the Richland one.
Exactly. So it was just right place, right time. I had the right people. I was able to get the equipment that I needed. And, I believe that, we had the skill set and the mindset to succeed. So we've been running the spin studio since January of 2024. And it's been going incredibly well. It's been so well received. We've put so much time and attention and energy into marketing and building up. We pretty much started over.
Yeah.
We inherited a few people that she had from her studio, but our social media account got deleted, and some other things happened. And
what was that about? How did
That's kind of a long story. Maybe something we can talk about off on the side a little bit.
Yeah.
But Pretty much someone that was working for Carly was managing the social media accounts, and I did not know that at the time.
Oh, okay.
And when Carly had given me the login information, I had made a post on the account saying like, hey, like, you know, we're going to be rebranding as Morgainz Elite Cycle. You know, we're going to be starting up a new business, those sorts of things. The person who had access to the account ended up deleting the account. Yeah, not a cool thing to do.
Yeah, bad blood.
there's a little bit more context to that story.
So how is Morgainz Elite Cycle related to Morgainz Fitness overall? Is it like just a sub? Like, are you the same company, or do you just work in the same place? So you've taken the same name. Like, how does that work?
That's a great question, and I think something that does cause a lot of confusion. We are a completely separate business entity.
Oh, okay. So you just use the same space.
Exactly. So the reason I took on the name Morgainz Elite Cycle and not something else, the actual business name that I created the LLC under is Firebird Fitness. And that
I like that, Phoenix.
Exactly. It pays homage to my name.
Yeah.
The reason I went with Morgainz Elite Cycle is because two reasons. I like to think long term and big picture, and the reality is I want to be involved with this gym, and I want to buy this gym. This location in Westmont that we're sitting in right now, this is the location that I want to buy, and I'm in the process of buying.
Oh, okay.
Separate from that, there's some other discussions happening with the owner, Kelly Morgan, about becoming like co-owner of all the other locations as well.
So is it all the other locations? They're just local, right? It's the one down in Richland, and then there's the one up here, and then
there's 4 locations.
Yeah, that's
fairly local. Westmont, Richland. There's one in Jackson, and then there's one in Somerset.
Okay,
so
that was the other one.
Somerset and Cambria County.
Yeah. Cool. So kind of like talking from your business background that led you to coming here, and then you did it in school and everything. What originally kind of drew you, interested you in the business management world that you kind of find yourself in now? It seems like you've always had a strong focus from everything that I've seen you doing and everything that you've been talking about towards specifically business, growing business, expanding business. I mean, even whenever we came in this room, it was like, what can I do to fix this, to make it better? Like, where do you think that comes from?
I think there's a couple of things that lead into that, and I will say there's a difference between management and leadership. But, you know, throughout my academic career, you know, high school and college, and even with athletics, like, I always kind of like fell into leadership positions. And it's not anything I necessarily like actively campaigned for, except for once in college. But like I always ended up being like National Honor Society president, track and field team captain. Like it just happened naturally. So it's something I've always had a passion for, is like leading people and developing people and just giving back to others. So that's what drew me into business management, just because I love working with people so much. You know, when I was younger, I spent a lot of time on the computer, and I went to VOTAC for computer networking, and that's what drew me down the information systems route. But I'm much more of a people person rather than like an analytical, logical, like computer-focused person.
So being a more like on the people side of it rather than just like, you know, numbers, you know, how do I optimize numbers? How do you go about like making sure that every person is individually accounted for, every person feels individually cared for, like in the structure that you're forming? How do you address each person as an individual?
Yeah. And I think that's a pretty good question. You know, for me, I always say that, you know, to find your way, create a path for others. Okay. And a big thing is creating opportunity and keeping people invested and engaged and really, you know, enthusiastic about what we're doing and we're trying to accomplish. So the big thing with right now the coaches is just making sure they have all the opportunity they want. Right now, we are the highest paying fitness studio in this area.
That's cool. Like in the county area?
In the county, Somerset,
Nice.
Cambria. Like as far as spin goes, there is no one paying more than what we're paying.
That's cool.
Okay. And, you know, to me, I'm not a money motivated individual, and the team that I'm so fortunate to work with now.
But it's a good way of finding the right people.
Exactly right. Money does not motivate people. Money is called a hygiene factor. It gets you out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
Things like bonuses or other opportunity, those are motivators for people to work harder. And we have different things like this is a commission-based structure. So they're completely incentivized to get people into their classroom and market themselves. Of course, I market the business and I promote them as well.
Yeah.
But there is a direct reward for every individual that they pull in.
I like that. That's good.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads into the next. I saw that you have done what's called a Scrum Master work, which was actually just a term that I found out while I was looking that up.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about that? Because it seems like it kind of, from what I read about it, it kind of relates to this idea of working with each individual person who's coming into your company to help you build it up. So what is that? How do you? What does it entail, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so that's a question that I get every single time.
It's just a fun word. Everyone wants to know.
It sounds fake.
Yeah,
right?
I read that was like Scrum Master.
You're like, that's not real.
I thought it was some like fitness, I thought like a gym name or something that was supposed to be funny. And so I looked up and it's like, wow, that's actually a real thing. That's cool.
Completely unrelated. So that goes back into my education as information systems, and it also ties into my natural interests and experiences with leadership. But a Scrum Master is a coach for software developers. I help build high-performing teams, and I also coach the organization as well. So it's a servant leadership role in the software industry. And Scrum itself is like, the easiest way to describe it is like, it's a flavor of project management in the software world.
Okay. What does it stand for? Is it short for something?
Scrum is not an acronym. Scrum stems from rugby.
Oh. So
in rugby, I believe a scrum is like when the team like huddles together. So that's where the term came from.
That's funny. I like that. Yeah. So talking about projects, other than Morgainz and some of the Scrum work that you've done, what projects throughout your career have you been involved with that, kind of looking back on it, you could say were landmark moments for you, whether personally or professionally, like that still, they had a lesson that could be learned, that you learned from them now that you still, it still affects you, or something that taught you how to become a better leader, or something along those lines?
I love this question. This is a great question.
I knew you would like this one.
Yeah, I do love this one. And I've been involved with so many projects. And for me, we had talked just before this about how, like, if there was something that scared me, like, I made it a point where, like, I had to say yes to do that thing. And it's when we get outside of our comfort zones, that's when we grow. Yeah. And, based off of our conversation earlier, that's why you're doing these podcasts. And I think that's excellent. There were a lot of really cool projects that I was able to take part of. And I'm trying to remember everything. In high school, when I was National Honor Society president, we did a community service event at the Youghiogheny Dam with the Army Corps of Engineers. And that was an event where we had, people with like mental disabilities come, and we played games and we did all sorts of things. It was a really great event. And that was something where I had like a mentor that kind of like handheld me through that process. And that was like our club advisor. And I think that was like a good taste of like running a project. Going into college, a big thing for me is always like setting up opportunities to give back. And how did we meet? Say a little bit about that.
Yeah, we were walking through the park, and I came up on your table, and I was like, hey, I know of Morgainz, so I want to talk to him a little bit about that. And you were giving out free lemonade and water, and I was like, well, there you go.
Yeah, we have.
I will never pass up free lemonade.
That's right. We've got free lemonade here right now. We'll get some right up there. But yeah, a big thing for me is like always giving back to the community, right? So in college, I did an event called the Business Forum, and that was probably the largest event that I ran in college. We had over 100 people in attendance. We invited former graduates from different disciplines within the business division to come back and give advice to students. So that was cool to get insight onto like the whole project, right? And like, coordinating, sponsors and getting people in there and making sure we had food and renting a venue and those sorts of things. So that was an event that I learned a lot about, especially the marketing, right? For the business, that's just a nonstop project, right? And running a business is very fun because I'm someone who can get bored easily,
Mm-hmm.
but with a business, you're always learning. I mean, if you're running a business well, you're
Yeah.
always learning, right?
Yeah, hopefully it never stops.
Right, exactly. And I get to touch so many different pieces, like, you know, operations, marketing, finance. Like, you get to be involved with a little bit of everything. And that keeps things so fun and engaging for me. Like learning about how like the algorithms on Facebook and Instagram work and on Google, and how can I manipulate, you know, the algorithm for like Google so that we're a key when you look up Spin Studio in Johnstown, we're the first thing that comes up.
Yeah.
Those sorts of things.
So, kind of in that light, you were talking earlier about you are in the process right now. You're in talks with trying to either get into a co-owner or ownership role of Morgainz. So, because it seems like you already have a pretty heavy hand in like how it's managed overall. So, where do you see yourself and where do you see Morgainz going? Maybe like 5 years, 10 years down the road, if you were to become like the owner or co-owner of it.
Yeah. So again, another great question. You're just on fire. I love it. I love it. So I'm someone who's always thinking about the future.
Yeah.
And for better or for worse, I mean, we need people that can handle the operations in the day-to-day. That's not necessarily me, right? Like I have a vision and I'm always thinking about the future,
Mm-hmm.
right? And just to go back to your project question,
Yeah.
the reason I love that question so much is because I'm someone who doesn't stop and reflect on my accomplishments.
Mm-hmm.
It's always like I hit this huge milestone, or I in college would get this scholarship or this award or whatever it was, and I'm already moved on to the next day.
There's no time for
Like I don't even
recognizing
think about it. And I think in hindsight, you know, it's important to reflect on these things. But to go back to, you know,
Mm-hmm.
your new question here. For me, the owner has done a great job at building this up to what it is. I mean, there's 4 locations. This is an 18,000 square foot facility. It's very nice in here.
It is really nice.
As you can tell.
I came in here and I was like, I might have to come to this gym.
I mean, listen, for the people at home, I mean, I'm not going to put Caleb on blast, but he did say that he had a Planet Fitness membership and he's in a Morgainz right now. But we're going to have to convert him, but that's all right.
Planet Fitness, don't listen to this. I'm not a trader.
Are you sponsored by them?
Sadly I'm not. I mean, if they were to sponsor me, I wouldn't complain about it.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can work
Unless you want to sponsor me with like a lot of lemonade, and then I think that would be a better.
We can work something out, I'm sure. That being said, there are areas of improvement that I've identified, and I think that's why the owner wants me involved.
Yeah.
You know, she, you know, is wanting to build a path to retirement. She's not ready to exit yet,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know, she's still young, and she's got some time. But, you know, my involvement does also build her a path to retirement.
Mm-hmm.
As far as my ideas, the things that I would like to expand on, one, I think our marketing could be a lot better, in particular our social media marketing.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's some policies, procedures, some operations things that could be cleaned up a little bit to standardize practices across the location. More importantly, the training program
Mm-hmm.
is something that I would like to expand on, which will just help deliver a more consistent experience.
Yeah.
What I would love to see is expanding on staffed hours and the number of staff present at a facility at any given time. I would also like to bring daycare back because I think that, you know, opens up an opportunity for people that, you know, having children may be a barrier to entry to come to a gym.
I like that.
And we had it at one point. I think there were some reasons why, you know, that was less favorable
Yeah.
of an initiative from
Was
the
it a COVID thing, you think, or was it before that?
I think COVID hit the fitness industry very hard, and I think that was
Yeah.
definitely a part of it. I would do more promotion of the daycare to get more people involved with it, so it didn't feel like we had an employee who was just sitting around like with no kids in there.
Yeah.
Right. A big initiative is just building a stronger community, and in my opinion, I think group fitness and the classes are a big part of building that community. You know, I see it with the Spin Studio, which again, Morgainz Elite Cycle is a separate business entity than Morgainz Fitness. But the things that we're focusing on is like we're not selling fitness. Like, we're selling accountability. We're selling community. And these are the things that get people coming back. And fitness is a byproduct of those things.
Yeah.
And to me, it's about the goal of, our mission statement is igniting fitness passion, one pedal stroke at a time. Right? And by doing so, we can fuel these personal transformations. So, I mean, that's kind of like a little bit of insight into like my vision. I would also like to expand on amenities. That's something that I think is a differentiator.
Yeah.
I would like to have a sauna in here.
That would be nice.
I used to work at LA Fitness for a couple months, like when I moved to Pittsburgh. And we did have the amenities, right? Like we did have a hot tub, we did have a sauna, we did have daycare.
That'd be nice, because I was looking at what's it called downtown, the YMCA, because like most YMCA's have that, but I'm pretty sure ours doesn't. They just have the pool, and that would be that would be a good idea, because I as far as I know, there's nowhere in the area that has that unless it's a more private area.
There is one place that has it, and I think it's a hotel in the area.
Oh.
Which is very interesting.
Yeah, is it I think I know which one you're talking about. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I'm not sure which one it is. Someone else was telling me about it, but in business, there's certain ways you can differentiate yourself.
Yeah.
And I think a big way people differentiate themselves is cost. People compete on cost. I don't believe in that at all. And then another way to differentiate yourself is like amenities or offerings or quality. That's the strategy I believe in.
So what kind of amenities would you think of?
Sauna for sure. Tanning maybe. We had mentioned daycare. I don't plan on putting a swimming pool anywhere.
Yeah, I don't think it would really.
That's a very, very large initiative.
Yeah, grab the shovels, start digging holes.
I don't think it's very sustainable for a gym either. Those are probably the primary ones that I'd be interested in.
Nice. I mean, those would all be great ads. I mean, because I mean, if a hotel is the only place in the area that has something, that it's definitely an area that that would just be great. So it seems like talking about both kind of your business eye and your fitness eye, that you kind of see the two as very similar, with money being something that is it's not a motivator, it's just kind of a means to an end. And you said the same thing with the business world. So this was something that I didn't put a specific question to, but I was kind of in my mind thinking while I was looking at the things that you've done. So how would you maybe summarize, because we've talked about it a lot, but how would you summarize your the connection that you see between fitness and between business, and how how it goes in with you?
Yeah. For me, and I think you summarized it fairly well, for me, it's about the goal of, giving back to others, fueling personal transformations, and bettering the lives of people through fitness. And, I could do that on an individual level, right? Like, I could just be like a personal trainer, right? And I could just pick up clients and, improve their lives and do those sorts of things. But that doesn't scale unless you have a whole business surrounding it.
Yeah.
And, Morgainz Elite Cycle was just kind of like the perfect opportunity at the right time. And that was something I was able to scale, right? And I'm someone who's motivated by achievement. So to me, like, the next step is like, okay, like, how do I, buy this gym? And then I can scale it up from there. And then how do I get involved with the other gyms? And then how do I open up new locations? Like, there will always be a next step.
Yeah.
And to me, it's all about the scaling, because that's when I can have the most impact. And to me, that's through reinvesting. I haven't paid myself a penny from this business yet. And I don't plan on doing it anytime soon, because I just want to keep reinvesting, putting money back into it. Just today, you saw I brought in those new signs.
Yeah, they're nice signs.
They're very nice signs. And I mean, that's something little, but it's also the little things as well that contribute to the big picture. So I would say that's how they're connected. I mean, the business is something that's scalable. That's what makes fitness scalable.
So as you do scale up more, where the next level becomes all the more bigger, because it's kind of like a upside down pyramid, because it's just getting bigger and bigger. How do you what are your thoughts on 5-10 years down the line, how you're going to kind of keep the atmosphere, keep the kind of team work, like the team ethic that you have currently at this smaller scale, whenever it does become larger and larger?
That's something that I've put a lot of thought into, and I think that starts with strong leadership from the top and maintaining my passion and enthusiasm and never being like too busy to coach the team.
Mm-hmm.
So like for me, I will need a line of managers, leaders really, who will enact the vision. So for me, with the Spin Studio, we have business values.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have an actual like employee handbook that they have to agree to and say like, you know what, I am going to create a fun and positive atmosphere, and I am going to promote community and inclusion and all of these things. And those values guide the vision and the expectations I have of the staff. Now, as we scale up and I'm less directly connected to every single individual, the leaders that we have in place, I'll still be connected with them. And I would like to have very frequent communication, whether it's daily or weekly one-on-ones. Mm. So they're connected to my passion and enthusiasm, and having the right people in place is instrumental to the success of this. Definitely. And then from there, they can radiate the vision down.
So as it becomes more kind of as it expands upside down triangle wise, and you become the kind of the top of that triangle, and then you have your people below you who see the people below them. How do you make sure that the people who are getting added on to the group have those same ideals beyond the handbook, beyond, do you wait for them to come to you? Do you look for them? How does that process go? I mean, maybe how does it go now, and then how do you think it'll go in the future?
Yeah. So I know you kind of said like beyond like the handbook, and I do think that's a part of the process for sure. Just making sure that the values are set up front. Yeah,
because I mean, setting down the values is very important, because then they know what their expectation is, and you can see who they are as, it gives you a framework to judge people off of. So I do like that.
Exactly. I think the interview process is just like a screening process, mm-hmm. and I think having layers to that. Like right now, like I'm doing the interviews for the manager position here, okay, right? Like for the whole gym, mm-hmm. and it starts with the current manager. He kind of pre-screens, he does an interview, and then he sends them to me. But I'll use my best judge of character, right, in making sure we're getting the right people. And I won't always get it right, and I know I won't. Mm-hmm. But it's one of those things where you do your best, right? You try to bring on the right person, and if mm-hmm. they're not working out, then you find someone else who you think is the right person.
As long as you're willing to accept it. I mean, because, like you said, mistakes are inevitable. Everyone's going to make them. And as long as you accept them, especially as a leader, people will see that. And, I mean, from my experience, with even very limited leadership roles, I know that whenever someone can see that the person who's above them is willing to accept that they've made the mistake, that's going to be all the more important to them, because then they know that you have what it takes to keep that moving forward. Because, I mean, people come to work where they come to work because, like you said, because of money, but even beyond money, it's because they believe in the project that they're being involved in. So
right, and there's this concept of like locus of control. Yeah. Have you heard of this?
I believe I have, but okay. If you could elaborate.
Sure. Yeah. So locus of control is like there's an internal locus of control and an external locus of control. And like someone with an external locus of control will say like, why is this happening to me? Or like things are outside of their control. Like they think things happen to them. Yeah. Where someone with an internal locus of control is like, I'm responsible for this. Mm-hmm. And for me, I'm someone who has high accountability. Mm-hmm. And I think as a leader, that's so important to say like, hey guys, like I messed up, like sorry, but this is how we're going to do this better in the future. And I said to the team from the start, I've never owned a spin studio before. I've never owned a business like this before. So from the start, I said that, I'm not promising perfection, but what I am promising is continuous improvement, and we're always going to get better. And I hold myself to a high standard, and I hold the team to that same standard as well. So if they do just as good as me or better, then we'll always be winning.
So I think kind of as we get close to where we're going to start wrapping up, what people in your life, whether in kind of a personal sense or in like maybe you've read about, you've studied them, inspire you to do the things that you're doing? Because I mean, I myself, like I'm big on seeing the biographies of people. I'm big on seeing like how people who have done great things did those great things. I love like the Steve Jobs. I read a biography on Steve Jobs. It is like one of my landmark books, I think. So do you have anyone like that? Do you have like kind of these sort of people who have inspired you to do what you're doing now?
This is a very interesting question because I think my answer is going to be very different than what other people might say or think. But, you know, I think a lot of people look at me and have this perspective of like success, or like maybe I came from like a successful background, or like my parents did well, or those sorts of things, or like I had role models. And the truth is that I never had any role models. Like these are things that like I just figured out on my own. And you know, I had a pretty rough upbringing. You know, I grew up very poor. My father was in jail during my childhood. You know, by the time I was 16, I had moved 30 times. Like, I experienced portions of homelessness in my life. And my point being is that, you know, I learned from the mistakes of the people around me. You know, I have family members, they're drug addicts, those sorts of things, you know, people who are alcoholics. And to me, it wasn't about learning what to do, it was about learning what not to do. And just like keeping a steady head on my shoulder. But separate from that, for me, you know, I've always had like high aspirations, and I never thought I was like stupid. I've always been very confident, for better or for worse. But at some point, like I never applied myself in school. Like I failed a year of school. That was because I moved so much. But you know, I never had like good grades. I never studied. I didn't do any homework. I mean, I still passed. And I think the end of my junior year in high school, I remember like failing this test because, again, like I didn't study or I didn't like, do any homework. I remember thinking to myself, like, what am I doing? Like, I'm not stupid. Like, I just don't apply myself. And going into my senior year, I was like, you know what, I'm going to take this serious. I'm going to do my homework. Like, I'm going to do everything. And, you know, that's when I really started, like, falling into, like, these leadership positions. And I had A's in all of my classes, like, even near 100%. I was National Honor Society president. Like, it was just such a flip. And I went to college on at least a double full tuition scholarship. I mean, I had 30 plus scholarships and awards that not only did I go to college for free, but they paid me at least what tuition was to go there as well.
That's great.
And I think a lot of those motivators were like, one, just kind of like being that success story, that underdog, and saying like, hey, like society has these expectations that, you know, I'm going to be a criminal, or I'm not going to do anything with my life, and I'm going to prove that wrong, right? And two, my thoughts on this like evolved over many years, but I always used to say like, you know, I wanted kids. I have an 11-month-old son.
Oh,
best thing ever, by the way. Anyway,
that's so cool.
I always said that, you know, I want my children to have the things that I never had.
Yeah.
But I actually believe that's wrong now. And that thought kind of evolved into, you know, I want my children to know the things that I didn't know. And then even that evolved, and it was like, well, why stop with my kids? Like, why not give back to everyone that I can? And to do that, I have to put myself into the position to make the most impact. And I may not mean anything to the world, but I can mean the world to someone. And I can make huge impacts on the lives of individuals. And those are the motivators that got me to where I am today.
I mean, I think I've always had that feeling that the world, just as a whole, is kind of waiting for people. It's kind of like it sets up at the beginning of someone's life. It sets up these impossible odds because it's waiting for someone to have that internal locus of control and say, no, I'm not doing what everyone thinks is going to happen to me.
Right.
And it's just waiting. It's like that eager parent on the sideline, like who's cheering their kid on, and he's waiting for him to hit the finish line. And I think it's evident in what you just told me. I think the world's, what's going on out there? That's crazy.
That's spin class. I think it just started. They're having fun over there.
But yeah, I think the world is ready for people to do the things that no one thought that they could do.
Yeah.
And so I think that can lead into the final question that I ask kind of a variant of this to all of my guests in one way or another. So I believe that someone's creative output into the world, kind of like we've been talking about, affects them just as much as you affect it. I mean, it's that idea So we've kind of already answered a lot of these questions, so I think that this can be kind of a good summary of that. But how has all of the work that you've done kind of affected your life? How has it shaped you into who you are now? Or maybe how has it made you come to understand that person, who it was 10, 15 years ago, who looked at his test and said, I'm not doing this anymore, and it just turned fully around?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think we kind of covered that.
I think we did too.
But I think it is like also a little bit hard to answer. I think it's just like you stumble upon these like epiphanies, like these like aha moments where they really like shape and influence your life. For me, like, it was all of those past experiences, and then, failing that test and just being like, and that was like the first test in a long time that I had failed. And it was like, I was still getting like A, B, C's, just like not studying or doing anything. So like hitting that point of like failure, and I think like for many success stories, like people hit some point of failure. And, when your back's against the wall, the only way to go is forward, right? And I think when you have these moments, and like my whole life with the odds stacked against me and having all of those experiences and the failure that I've experienced was like, okay, my back's against the wall. Like, there's nowhere else to go but forward and up. And I think that was probably like the pivotal moment in my life. And then just always challenging myself to get better and not being afraid of failure. I look at the word fail as an acronym. First attempt in learning. Right?
That's good.
And you have to fail often and fail fast because those are opportunities to learn. And when you think of the most successful people that you've heard of, Steve Jobs, whoever,
full of failures.
Full of failures.
So many failures.
But what separates them from others is that they didn't give up. The defining factor for success is persistence. And it doesn't matter how smart you are, how educated you are, whatever, persistence. The slogan, press on, has solved and will solve every problem of the human race.
That's a good place to end there. Well, thank you, Phoenix, for coming on the podcast. I hope that I'm going to come for the spin class now because you're
going to have to.
This was a great advertisement. But thank you for coming on. This was a great talk. I'm definitely going to listen to this a couple times over, even just past editing. But thank you for coming on today.
Well, Caleb, thank you so much for inviting me on. Had a great time. I think you did an excellent job as a host. You sure did your due diligence. So I'm excited to see where your future takes you.
Thanks. I'm going to bring you water next time we do an interview.
Yep, of course. You're going to have to.
And that wraps the episode. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Hopefully in one of these next episodes, I'll learn to start saying because instead of cuz. But today was not that day. Have a good day, everybody.